people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
To the mother relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this, our weekend recap. A whole lot happened in the world of boxing. We're going to have to spread out that recap over a few episodes, one or two. We're going to kick it off with the Sandy Ryan versus Marie-Pierre Huel WBO welterweight title fight. An exciting fight, an action fight, which is what I expected. In the first round, we saw Marie-Pierre Huel come out strong, attempting to apply big pressure on Sandy Ryan. But Sandy
weathered the initial storm and still managed to land the cleanup punches.
You could argue that Marie-Pierre Huel was the more prolific puncher, the busier puncher in the first round, but not the cleaner puncher.
That was Sandy, and I gave Sandy the first round. I gave Marie-Pierre Huel the second round.
She was a lot busier than Sandy in that round. Sandy Ryan, who was laying off, giving up real estate to try and create space to get off clean punches, while Marie-Pierre Huel was a lot more prolific and applying a lot of pressure, throwing combinations and landing them.
I gave Sandy the first round. I gave Marie-Pierre Huel the second.
Sandy Ryan the third for landing cleaner and stronger punches. There was a noticeable difference in power between the fighters whenever they did land a clean shot.
Sandy's variety of punches was better than what you were getting from Marie-Pierre Huel.
Sandy's shot selection, angling off and getting in body shots and uppercuts. She landed a mammoth right hand towards the tail end of the round, the third round. I gave Sandy the third round and the fourth.
In the fourth round, Marie-Pierre Huel was applying big pressure and landing combinations early.
So I felt like Sandy ended up stealing the round by finishing strong. A big salvo of punches towards the tail end of the round.
She had Marie-Pierre Huel pinned down in a corner, and she was unloading.
Unloading towards the tail end of round 4. In round 5, we saw good clean boxing from Sandy.
Beating those feet, using that ring, moving to create space, and picking off Marie-Pierre Huel as Marie tried to close the distance.
Sandy Ryan walking her into eye-catching uppercuts, clean punches, clean shots. That was in the 5th round. In the 6th round,
Sandy Ryan applied big pressure on Marie-Pierre Huel, throwing combinations, backing Marie off.
Pinning her down in a corner and unloading towards the tail end of the 6th round, which I gave to Sandy Ryan, gave the 7th to Marie.
Marie-Pierre Huel starts off the round, landing combinations, clean punches. Sandy Ryan was unfazed by Marie-Pierre Huel's shots, but that doesn't change the fact that Marie was landing.
She was getting off shots. There was an eye-catching counter left to Marie-Pierre Huel's body towards the tail end of the round. She was visibly hurt by the shot.
But the round ended.
I gave that round to Marie-Pierre Huel, but she was hurt towards the end of it, the end of the 7th. In the 8th, Sandy Ryan starts off the round applying big pressure, and Marie-Pierre Huel seemed to have still been recovering from that body shot in the previous round.
Sandy put the squeeze on her.
Huel landed some good shots here and there, but for the most part, it was a Sandy Ryan round, finishing strong, backing Marie-Pierre Huel into a corner, and once again, unloading in round 9.
Sandy was landing some big punches. You could tell she was going for the knockout.
Credit to a very exhausted Marie-Pierre Huel, who had been on the receiving end of a lot of punches. She was noticeably tired, but she was hanging tough, hanging in there.
Still lost the round, though. She lost the 9th round. She lost the 10th round.
Big pressure from Big Sandy, who wanted to finish strong, wanted to take out Marie-Pierre Huel, and she was busier in the 10th round. She definitely won it.
The stylistic matchup between Sandy Ryan and Marie-Pierre Huel was that of the boxer-puncher versus the pressure fighter. Sandy Ryan being the boxer-puncher and Marie-Pierre Huel being the pressure fighter.
That stylistic matchup, the boxer-puncher tends to have the advantage because they can alternate. They can alternate seamlessly from offense to defense back to offense.
Strong showing from Sandy Ryan.
That was evident when you saw Sandy Ryan moving lateral, creating space, looking to walk her opponent into shots.
And it was evident when Sandy Ryan was the one applying pressure. The boxer-puncher.
The virtue of the boxer-puncher is all in the name. They can box, but they can punch.
Alternate between the two.
Giving them an advantage over the pressure fighter that can be a handful. Pressure fighters tend to be, though they're one-dimensional.
They often are. strong.
You could tell at the start of this fight that Marie-Pierre Huel's intention was to overwhelm Sandy Ryan with volume and with combinations and aggression, but Sandy Ryan, being the bigger puncher of the two, that wasn't going to work.
She found out quickly she's not going to steamroll Sandy Ryan.
Sandy was the stronger fighter of the two and the better boxer.
That's why Sandy's punches were so much cleaner and so much more eye-catching than Marie-Pierre Huel's punches.
A thoroughly entertaining action fight. You saw a conscious effort from Sandy to finish strong and finish Marie-Pierre Huel. She was going for the knockout towards the tail end of this match. Credit to Marie-Pierre Huel for being able to absorb those shots and not go down, not go out.
She was getting pasted.
And this fight will serve as good experience for Sandy Ryan moving forward because there is a plan in play to put her in the ring with Jessica McCaskill. Jessica, who's a pressure fighter, the same way that Marie-Pierre Huel is a pressure fighter.
This was a good learning fight in preparation for what could be that fight, provided that Jessica makes it past her mandatory challenger, Ivana Habazin, and I think she will.
I think we can expect to see that around either June or July.
Yeah, this fight was ideal preparation for that fight, that potential fight with Jessica McCaskill.
And that's going to be a war if it happens, though I reiterate, this weekend's fight was adequate preparation for a fight with Jessica. Congratulations to Sandy Ryan, this division's newly crowned WBO champion.
She's really hit her stride, and she is coming into her own.
We then come to the main event of that same card, the IBF Super Featherweight title fight between the champion, the then champion, Shavkat Rakimov, and the challenger, former champion, Joe Cordina.
I went with Joe Cordina to win this fight by way of knockout or technical knockout. I feel like he came close to doing that, but fell just short of the mark.
I feel like Joe not hitting the gas when he had the guy hurt him out of there early, perhaps in the first half of the match. I feel like that made things difficult for him moving forward. It ended up being a closer fight and a tighter fight than I originally anticipated, though Joe Cordina still managed to impress in other areas. His sudden pivots, changing angles, and hitting a guy with shots in the blind spots.
Joe Cordina has great feet.
Great movement and great shot selection, great counterpunching. Moments in the match where he stops the very aggressive and game Shavkat Rakimov dead in his tracks off counter jabs.
Shot selection in the pocket was admirable as well.
For me, it was a 7-5 kind of fight. 7-5 with a 10-8 round in the second round when Joe Cordina scored that knockdown.
7 rounds to 5.
Tack on the added point from the knockdown in the second round. Joe Cordina won this fight.
You can't let the aggression, the come-forward aggression of Shavkat Rakimov fool you into thinking that it's effective aggression just because he's throwing punches.
Just because he's throwing punches in bunches when he's getting countered in kind.
A lot of what he is throwing, it's not necessarily getting in, it's not necessarily getting through. Saw a lot of volume from Shavkat Rakimov, but a lot of those shots ended up on the arms and gloves.
The better punch picking and the more eye-catching shots, the more meaningful ones were coming from Joe Cordina. Discrepancy in the fighter's power. There was a big difference when Joe landed clean than when Shavkat landed clean.
There was.
Stylistic matchup. This fight, like the previous fight, the Sandy Ryan versus Marie-Pierre Huel fight, this fight, like that fight, was boxer-puncher versus pressure fighter, with Shavkat Rakimov being the pressure fighter and Joe Cordina being a boxer-puncher.
Joe's a good boxer-puncher, a counter-puncher, the counters.
That's how he was able to get Shavkat Rakimov to simmer down at times. Slow him down, stop him in his tracks, stop his forward momentum by hitting this guy with shots he didn't see.
Between the punches.
When he's not defending himself and when he can't brace himself. Good counter-punching can go a long way, and we saw some really good counter-punching from Joe Cordina.
Once again, that's the virtue of the boxer-puncher. It's all in the name. They can box and they can punch.
Alternating between the two whenever the situation calls for it. Though if the fight ended up being a bit closer than I initially anticipated, it's because Joe was becoming reliant on those counter shots, perhaps a little bit too reliant, not showing activity at times, quiet moments that allowed Shavkat Rakimov to get in this fight and throw punches in bunches. You wonder if Joe Cordina isn't being outworked whilst waiting to land a big counter.
There were moments where he was waiting.
Moments where it was almost like they were taking turns, like Joe was waiting for Shavkat Rakimov to finish getting off his shots so he can start putting punches together himself.
This was in the second half of the fight.
Now maybe that's because the pace of the fight was starting to wear on Joe. You know, Shavkat Rakimov, he's got a great engine, and he's a stubborn customer. Noticeable damage to his left eye, swelling, and a cut on the eyelid.
It's a bad place for a cut.
Though it didn't discourage Shavkat Rakimov, he powered through it, barreling forward, doing his best to try and outwork Joe Cordina.
The Welshman's punch picking was a lot better than what you got from Shavkat.
Even if Shavkat was busier than Joe Cordina, he wasn't really more effective.
I'll tell you what makes this victory impressive for Joe. This is the second time he's become IBF champion at this weight, and this is the second world champion he's beaten. The first was Kenichi Ogawa.
Kenichi Ogawa, who he stopped in June of last year, close to a year ago, approximately what? 10 months?
2 months short of a year, coming off a hand injury.
He faced yet another world champion, another IBF champion for the IBF title. Shavkat Rakimov was the IBF champion going into this fight after knocking out Zelfa Barrett.
He's yet another champion that Joe beat for the red belt.
I happen to think if not for that 10-month layoff and coming off of that hand injury, Joe Cordina might have won this fight by way of knockout.
Perhaps.
It's impressive.
It is.
2 consecutive wins over 2 reigning champions back-to-back, Kenichi Ogawa and Shavkat Rakimov, who's a handful.
And a stubborn customer, a hard man to discourage.
Took a lot of hard shots in this fight, but he wouldn't give up.
Saw Zelfa Barrett in action on the undercard of this fight. He won a unanimous decision. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Joe Cordina make his first defense of the IBF title opposite the ring, Zelfa Barrett.
Shavkat Rakimov is a common opponent. He happens to be a common opponent between Zelfa Barrett and Joe Cordina. I think that's a sensible and sensical fight for Joe moving forward.
They could do good business with this fight.
I could see that getting made. I could see Joe Cordina fighting Shavkat Rakimov for a second time. In terms of the aesthetic of the match, it was entertaining, it was an action fight, and it was a close fight. It was tight.
Looked like a 7-5 kind of fight to me.
Congratulations to Joe Cordina for living up to my expectations. I figured
He's going to win that title. He's going to beat Shavkat Rakimov. He's going to be a 2-time IBF super featherweight champion. And now he is.
Finally, we come to yesterday's ensemble piece, the big showdown between Ryan Garcia and Gervonta Davis. Not a very good card.
Inferior.
Not a very good main event. Not a very good fight.
Inferior.
For all the hullabaloo, all the hoopla, and all the bluster about Ryan Garcia and Gervonta Davis finally fighting each other,
Ahead of the match, I told you that Ryan Garcia's popularity, the notoriety that he has, he doesn't have it because of a fighter that he beat or a belt that he won. He has it because he has a sizable social media following. And in terms of boxing, the actual boxing,
he's not far removed from a prospect.
making all the weight stipulations tacked onto this fight quite egregious and unnecessary.
In the first round, we saw Ryan Garcia come out throwing his lead hand, shooting that jab, backing off Gervonta Davis, who was moving lateral.
Staying on the perimeter of the ring, circling away, not doing very much of anything. I don't even know if he threw a punch in that round.
I really didn't see him land one. I gave that round to Ryan Garcia on activity, just being the busier fighter and coming forward, putting his man on the ropes. Though in the second round,
That's where his inexperience showed up.
where he fought a more cautious fight in the first round, just working his jab and staying behind it, in the second round, he decided to sell out. He decided to go for it.
Start stepping into his punches, really stepping into him to bring over hard shots.
Gervonta Davis would instinctively smother, tying up Ryan Garcia.
Ryan wanted to get started early.
As stated, that was Ryan Garcia's inexperience showing up. Ryan Garcia, not being as seasoned as a Shakur Stevenson, not being as seasoned as a Devin Haney, a Lomachenko, at that level.
He sold out.
And he sold out early, going to land big shots, big punches
What got him knocked down?
in the second round. And I chalk it up to inexperience because he doesn't have the poise that comes with experience, the patience.
It's a 12-round fight.
You're just getting started, or you should be, and you ain't got no patience to work your jab.
You're a taller, longer fighter.
You want to keep this guy at arm's length for as long as you can in order to create frustration in the man opposite the ring. Get him to make mistakes, and instead, Ryan Garcia is the one who started making mistakes.
It was a mistake to go for it that early in the fight, and that's why he got knocked down. That's why he got countered.
2 to 3 judges judges had that a 10-9 round in favor of Gervonta Davis, and one of them had it a 10-10 round, an even round. You don't often see that.
Strange that Gervonta Davis scores a knockdown, a clear knockdown, a hard one in the second round, and he's not given a 10-8 round for it. I guess the judges thought that up until that point,
They must have thought that Ryan was winning the round up until the knockdown, though I myself saw his aggression as being very ineffective. He was getting smothered. He tried to come forward, stepping into his punches to bring over hard shots, but Gervonta wouldn't let him. He'd tie him up.
knocks him down in the second round. I think Gervonta Davis was in cruise control in the third, fourth, and fifth.
That knockdown seemed to have sapped Ryan Garcia's confidence, and he lost the subsequent 3 rounds that followed after the second.
At that point, it was Gervonta Davis moving lateral, playing at the angles, and landing backhands on Ryan Garcia.
Straight left hands as Gervonta Davis fights out of the southpaw stance. Ryan Garcia, he's an orthodox fighter. He'd shoot that jab, trying to get something going, but he was a little bit more tentative after that knockdown, whereas Gervonta Davis was all smiles and in full control of the match, highlighting that Ryan wasn't really ready for this.
He wasn't.
Ahead of the match, I told you that Gervonta Davis is a more experienced fighter with a lot more rounds in the bank than Ryan, that Ryan is not far removed from a prospect, and in facing Gervonta Davis, what he's essentially doing is skipping steps in order to get to the bag.
That's all it was.
That he won't run the risk of facing a Devin Haney or a Shakur Stevenson because he could lose those fights just as easily as he could lose this one. But with this one, he makes more money. So this is the one that he decided to have, making several sacrifices for it. The weight stipulations.
Those concessions.
It's not that Ryan Garcia doesn't have tools. He's got some tools. He actually had some of the right ingredients for this fight, but he's not yet a put-together fighter.
Lasagna needed more time in the oven.
Tack on the weight stipulations that would and could affect his punch resistance, what kind of shots he could absorb. I went with Gervonta Davis to win this fight by way of knockout. That's exactly what he did. I think Ryan Garcia had a good 6th round.
I only gave Ryan 2 rounds in this fight, the first round and the 6th round.
He was a bit busier in the 6th round. Looked like he found his confidence, rediscovered it.
Just to get stopped in the 7th.
What costed Ryan Garcia this fight? A number of things. You know, he's a taller, longer fighter than Gervonta Davis, but he was stepping too far into his punches, getting within striking distance of Gervonta instead of using his height, using his length to keep the smaller man out. Keep him at arm's length. Frustrate him. Keep him out there long enough that he starts lunging in and starts making mistakes, allowing you to counter.
Ryan didn't do that. He doesn't have the poise or the patience, the experience.
Something you develop over time.
Ryan seemed to me like a fighter who's skipping steps.
His confidence ahead of this match was compelling. It was compelling, though not convincing. At least not to me. I picked Gervonta Davis to knock him out. That's what he did. Am I impressed?
No.
Fighting Ryan Garcia for Gervonta Davis entailed the least risks for the most rewards. Fighting Ryan is not as risky as fighting a Devin Haney, a Shakur Stevenson, or a Vasyl Lomachenko. Ryan Garcia is the least experienced of those aforementioned fighters, those aforementioned names.
The only reason Gervonta Davis fought him is because he'd get the biggest reward.
The least risks for the most rewards. That's the motto.
That's why I'm not impressed.
Kind of feel sorry for anybody who paid the full $85 to watch this on Showtime. I paid the discounted DAZN price.
60.
For existing subscribers, this did not play out like a mega match. This did not play out like a mega fight, a high-level fight.
It's what I thought it was.
It ended how I thought it would end.
And I'm not impressed.